Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Shift Book Club. I'm Sam Baker, and I'm a little bit beside myself because Lily King is here to talk about her masterful new novel, Heart the Lover. And it feels a bit special because Lily unfortunately had to cancel her British tour, so has done hardly any British events, but she's here for you and me. Before I go any further, I just want to say something about Heart the Lover because we have never had a reaction like it to a book club pick. A good reaction, Lily, don't worry. We have read some amazing books by some amazing authors. And you guys started messaging me within 24 hours of your copies arriving, saying that you inhaled it, that you loved it. Every single response I had was a rave. Many of you blubbed, which we're gonna talk about later. And many more said it went straight into your books of the year. Some of them right at the top. And you aren't alone because all of the reviews have been a rave. The Guardian said it was vivid, moving, and witty. The New York Times said it was a profoundly affecting story of romantic entanglement from a master of the genre. Whatever the genre is, though, I'm not sure about genre in the context of this book.
Hmm.
And so many of our favourites loved it, from Elizabeth Strout to Curtis Sittenfeld, who was here in March, to Anne Patchett. And we don't pick favourites, Lily, but I think you might have beaten Curtis in the popularity stakes. Um, so, before we start bombarding Lily with questions, just a few things to know about her. Lily's the New York Times bestselling author of five novels, including Euphoria and Writers of Lovers and Lovers. Sorry, I'll say that again. Writers and Lovers, which I know some of you have already read. And it'll be no surprise that Heart the Lover instantly joined them in the New York Times bestseller list. She's also won numerous prizes, including the Kirkus Prize, the New England Book Award, and the MacDowell Fellowship. And it's always struck me as a bit weird, Lily, that in the UK you haven't been as big as in the States.
Hmm.
I really think that Heart the Lover is the book to do it.
Oh, I
And
hope
can
so.
we just have some love for this cover?
I know the cover is great. I love it so much.
Cover is fantastic. Was this were the publishers just because I know this is the American cover because the British publishers were like, should we stick with that? And we were like, yes, stick with that. It's amazing. Did were they just genius or was it the outcome of a long, painful process?
The latter.
Oh,
Yes, I was sent uh way back. I was sent a cover that everybody loved at my publishing house, and um and my editor wrote me and said, sending it to you, holding our breath. And I just hated it. I hated it so passionately, I wasn't even on the fence about it. And so I just had to say, no, I can't do that. It looked a lot like Writers and Lovers, and it was a leg and a shoe. And it was just not it was just not right. And, and then I think I got about 30, there were so many versions. And then they got a new designer, and on Monday morning, she had to hand in something like five designs. She did. Nobody liked them. She said, wait, give me to the end of the day. Boom, this.
my God, say
Isn't
what?
that incredible? It was initially it was yellow with red. Um, and then we realized it was too much like a very popular book here called Yellow Face that had come out a couple of years
Oh
ago.
yes, it's very
And
popular
so
here.
we
Yeah.
decided not to do yellow with eyes and the whole thing. And so, we played around with color and we came up with that. But what I didn't realize, and you all probably have, and I'm sure you have all seen this cover too, but this is what she was playing with. That iconic Great Gatsby cover. This was the cover of people my age. Every single 10th grader was reading this book, with that cover. And I thought that was so brilliant because, of course, the Great Gatsby, plays
Yeah.
into the book. And I think the themes of the Great Gatsby really overlap, about yearning and the past, and how the past is never really the past, what Faulkner said. And so I'm so glad to have that cover sort of playing with that book.
Oh, it's such a good cover and it's so strong. And I don't know whether they've done this in the States, but in the UK, you'll know, they've adopted this style for writers and lovers now. And it's so much stronger.
Oh, yes, that's very interesting. Yeah, it's so much stronger, isn't it?
So much.
It's a much better cover. I'm very excited about it.
But I can't quite get my head around the leg. What was the thinking? A leg. I don't
I know.
even.
I really have trouble with shoes and with body parts. I mean, obviously there are body parts here, but it's a little different.
Oh, totally. I always think that legs are what they do when they can't think what else to do, or
Yeah.
woman walking away.
Yes, women walking the back or the back of the neck.
Oh,
I got a lot of that. I got a little hair, like a messy bun in the back of the neck. That was one of them. It was a lot. But
yeah.
then, can I just tell you what my daughter said about the title?
Oh, yeah, do.
Because before even the cover, of course, I had to decide on a title, and I was really uncertain. And so I floated it out to my family group chat with my two daughters and my husband, and I thought, I'm thinking of calling it Heart the Lover. And we all play the card game in my family, so they knew they knew that
Ah,
they'd heard Heart the Lover before. And my daughter wrote back immediately. My younger daughter, who was 23 at the time, she said, "Mom, you cannot call your novel Heart the Lover. You will destroy your career."
oh, why?
She really didn't like it. And so I tried to think so hard of another title, and I never could. So this one stuck.
I mean, until you get to the card game, though, you obviously don't get the title. But
Right, right.
why did she think it was a career destroyer? Was it because it cheesy? What
Yeah. Yes.
cheesy?
Cheesy. Cheesy was going to be my word. Cheesy, corny, schmaltzy. The word heart and the word lover in the same
Yeah,
title.
two out of three. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the word lover is kind of not everyone's favorite word. Not my favorite word.
I'd love to know what everybody thinks of the title. Can you pile in the chat? And it's not, you won't be piling on Lily. It'll just be interested to know if you agree with Lily's daughter. I mean, I just didn't. I remember when the publishers told me that they were buying it in the UK. Yeah, loved it. But didn't know about the card game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I didn't think anything. I didn't obviously get the significance of it. And then when you get to
Yeah, of
the point
course.
where you get the significance, you're like, oh, of course. And then it all slots into place.
Yeah, yeah. And I like a title that doesn't really make sense until you're in the book and then you get it. And I should say that game doesn't really exist. It's a family game that was taught to us by family friends, so you can't really find it. It's not like an American thing that you all don't know about.
Okay. So I mean, this is not where I was going to start, but card games are a bit of a thing for you, aren't they?
They are. They are. I think my editor sometimes rolls her eyes like, "Oh my God, they're playing cards again." I don't know. It's kind of like it's a little bit like eating. Apparently, I have a habit of feeding my characters. And I also
Well,
just
people
have a
got to
habit
eat.
of after they eat, what are they going to do? They're going to play some cards. I don't know. I love cards. So that has a lot to do with it.
So tell us where it started. What was the seed?
Mm.
Heart
You
lover.
know, it's so strange because it's not like right now I have an idea for another book and it's sort of percolating, and it's not really not there's not a lot of percolation actually, but I know what it is and I know what I want to do. I want to know what I want to research, but I had no idea I wanted to write this book. I mean, it wasn't like I was thinking about it or mulling it over in my journal or anything like that. I was writing something entirely different. I was writing a political murder mystery set on a Maine island, and I had a dead senator on the first page, and I wrote about 90 pages of it, and I literally hit a brick wall. I mean, I just could not go any further. And right at that point, Ann Patchett sent me her manuscript of Tom Lake. And I started reading it and I thought, oh my God, she's just having so much fun. And I am having zero fun. How do I have fun? And I kind of flipped to the back of my notebook that I was writing my political murder mystery in, and I just started writing that college scene of the two guys. Like I immediately had the idea of the two guys and her, and then I also knew that they would go into the future. I knew that there would be that scene, those scenes that are now the third part. I thought that would be most of the book, the third part.
Mm.
I thought it would be the second part, and it would be probably like 4/5 of the book, and that this college stuff was just quick backstory. But it didn't pan out that way. I got kind of into that house and the card game and everything else that was going on in there, and I stayed there for a while, and then finally I moved on. So that was it. Just kind of, I just started writing it, trying it out.
Is that how you approach writing? Are you a planner, or do you tend to just see where it takes you?
Well, I'm a little bit of both. I think when I first get an idea, I'm just trying it out and I'm just seeing where it goes. I do not do a ton of planning in advance because I have to see what the voice sounds like and if it feels right, if it feels like a place I could be for a while. And and then once I have that, then I start getting ideas for what can happen down the road. And so really as soon as I start writing and it starts feeling good, then I keep notes in the back of the notebook that I'm writing in, and I the kind of notes for the future and what could happen. And so that's kind of the planning that happens. It's pretty organic. And then when my notes are really you know kind of going all over the place and there are pages and pages of them, then I sort of create a timeline. Like I take a piece of paper and I put it sideways and I write a line across it. And then in vertical, I write the various things that I think might happen along the way, sort of chronologically within the book, but there might be flashbacks within the timeline. But just how I want to sort of, which chapter I want to write next and next. And I kind of just create a roadmap. And I really do kind of write from start to finish. And then
Right.
sometimes though I mess around with certain things. This one, I didn't have the structure right away. I didn't have that second part at all until the very end. And then I kind of had to scramble to write that and put that in. And yeah, there are a lot of questions about that whole situation of how to tell this story.
Yeah, what were the kind of pivot points that you put in when you were doing your roadmap? What were the kind of little scenes that it what's the word I'm looking for? Well, pivoted on.
Yeah, yeah. I think, well, I knew that he would ask her to see the deer hunter. So that was the first thing, is like get her to the deer hunter. And then I knew he'd invite her back and that Yash would show up. And so it was kind of get it so they're on the couch and Yash is sort of performing for them and they can relax. I knew that. And then I don't know. I was kind of in like, woo, I don't know where we're going now. Uh, but I did know that pretty early on, her connection with Yash was going to be strong and confusing. And um, and I knew that she was going to stay for an extra semester. That he wasn't going to graduate and that she was going to stay for an extra semester. Um, and then of course I did know that we would end up where we end up in the third part. Um, and so I would take notes for that. And I knew what that was going to look like. Although there's one big thing that I didn't know, which was the third part. I kept on writing it and it wasn't working. It was kind of flat. And I would read it over and I'd be like, well, why is she there? Why is she there? I don't know. If I'm getting too ahead of myself, you can slow me down and we can talk about this
No,
later
no,
if you
you're
want.
good. Go for it. Yeah,
Okay.
go where it
And so,
goes.
so that kept on happening. And my editor kind of knew it was a problem. And she was like, well, make her go out for coffee, like leave where she is. I'm trying not to do any spoilers. And have her go out for coffee, have her have a conversation with Sam sort of thing, or, you know, and I knew the problem was bigger than that, but I didn't know how to solve it. And then, like 12 days before, um, I had to hand in a final draft and the book was going to go into production. Like I had sold it maybe 4 months earlier and I'd been on a schedule and now the final draft was due in 12 days. And I read it over again and I was like, it's still not working. Like this third part that I wanted to be the whole book that I was most interested in, it was still flat. And so my husband saw me across the room and he is like, what is going on? I was like, I can't make it work. I just can't make it work. And he said something that he had been saying for literally a year, which was
How annoying.
it was something that he had gotten from a book called, he's a writer too, from a book called Plot and Structure by a screenplay writer, and which I considered like a little bit below me. And there was a chapter, chapter 7, um, and it was kind of tricks to increase the tension in your screenplay. And there was a list of 10 things. And one of them, he kept on saying, she needs to go there with a secret. He'd said that for a year. And I kept on saying, there is no secret. Stop saying that. We're not talking about that. That's not part of my book. It's not going to work. You can take your little plot and structure tidbits and tricks of the trade. And, and then I was so desperate 12 days before I had to hand in the final draft that I was like, okay, fine. And I went into my study and I opened the last page of the first section. I changed 5 lines and I had my secret. And then I had 11 days to rewrite the entire rest of the book. And so I took this little tiny tree climbing scene that I had. It was 3.5 pages. And I put it in the middle and I expanded it. And I did what I had been avoiding doing, which was, sorry, something terrible's happened, but I'm back.
No,
Okay.
you're back. You're back. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm afraid I got a phone call and it just all,
All
and
right.
so I only have my phone. I'm so sorry. Um,
Don't worry.
and I just want to say I'm in a hotel room. This is not my house. And so I had to really scramble to create that, but it worked. I feel like it gave that third part the engine that it needed at the very last minute. Because before I was trying to make it like she had to be home because of her child being sick and needing the operation. And I kept on tightening that and tightening that. But you were still like, why is she there then? It just wasn't working. So I had my engine and then I just had this really, really fun 11 days of just, I don't know, just tearing into the book and everything kind of just fell into place. And it was really extraordinary. I like to say it in case there are any writers out there, because I do feel like these things come to you at the last minute and you have to wait for them and you have to be patient.
Yeah, it's so that moment, which everybody who's read it knows exactly what you're talking about, and everybody who hasn't is going, "What is she talking about?"
Yeah.
But the people saying, like Kristen is saying that she audibly shouted on the bus when she read that page. It's just like, I mean, how annoying of him though. Your husband, ugh, annoying,
Oh,
annoyingly right.
quite annoyingly right. Annoyingly right.
And while we're here, Kristen was saying she had a deer hunter date experience at university and they didn't go on date two.
Oh, that's so funny. I love that. Yeah. It's a tough first date movie. It's a tough any date movie,
Yeah,
really.
it's a big ask. Good.
Oh,
I just want to go back as well to something that Ellie said, which it's kind of one of those slightly more of a comment than a question, but it's a good comment. So I'm going to say, and it does tie into something that um, I was going to say, which is that she said it's everything that she wanted in a novel, and she found it really impossible to put down. Read it in 2 sittings. And how do you feel when people say, I just read it overnight, or read it in 2 sittings, and you're like, took me 2 years to, and you read it in 5 minutes?
I know. It is, I mean, it's fantastic. Like you want someone, you want to, somebody once said to me when I was looking around, I was doing some teaching and I was asking, what do you always tell your students? And one of my friends who teaches a lot said, um, I tell them like at the a beginning should be you grab them by the collar. You're basically saying, you're grabbing them by the collar and you're not letting them go. And so, if I can do that and people, stay up late or I don't know, miss a meeting or something like that, that it makes me feel like I've done my job, even though it's certainly there's not an even balance between the work and the reading because it does take me a very long time to get there.
I mean, like Ellie said, and I think this is something that really struck me. I mean, it's under 250 pages, and there is so much in there, so much. But there's no, that kind of that mid-20s college love affair that has so much impact on the rest of your life, good or bad. And
Mm-hmm.
most people have had one, and the path not taken, and there's lots of detail, but there's no padding. How do you do that? How do you do that, Lily? Because that is
Well,
such an art.
I think thank you very, very, very much. I don't like to read padding. I don't like,
No,
I feel
oh,
like sometimes you can feel the author is like revving the engine, like, okay, I'm gonna go now. And I feel like some of that stuff should have been cut. And so I think what helped me with this book is that I did always know that where I was going was that third part. And so I wanted to get there as quickly as I could, even though I couldn't get there in the 20 to 30 pages that I thought I was going to do it in. I just, I wasn't, I was just wanting to give kind of little impressionistic moments. And so the reader would have the emotion of the situation so that when we go to the third part, um, they would get that. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting another.
who keeps
Okay, I'm back.
phoning
It's
you?
really terrible. So
No,
that's I think that helped me in that way. But I don't want to be bored, and I certainly don't want to bore the reader. That is like my most horrific thought. So I do try to just make things quick, and I don't normally I don't do a lot of description. At the very beginning, when they walk into the house, there is a lot of description of that house.
mm,
And maybe I was revving my engine a little bit, but I was so surprised by it because it was like I was nesting. I didn't realize that once I got into that house that I was going to settle in for a while and feel comfortable. And that was sort of important to the book. I didn't understand that the house was going to be so important and what it was going to mean to her uh, until I got there. And so I did spend a little time with that. But that's the only place where I feel like, oh, did I describe too much?
no, because it's so important. It's like, I mean, you can't have four people in a triangle, but the house is like it's part
Yeah,
of it.
it
It's
is. It
it's
really is.
part of, you know, Yash and Sam almost wouldn't be Yash and Sam without the house.
Mm-hmm.
So two and a
It's
bit,
true.
two and a bit. Do you write small or do you write big and cut?
Oh, I write small and have to add. That's
Mm.
always, my editor always wants me to add. There's no cutting. I mean, every occasionally I might have, two modifying, an adjective or something, and she might say choose one. But that doesn't really that used to happen when I was younger. It doesn't happen anymore.
Um, there's if you're a Zoom user, I'm sorry, I don't want to call you Zoom user, but you haven't put your name. Do you want to post your question about the audiobook so that I can ask Lily just what I'm just saying that just while I remember? Um, sorry, Amy, question from Amy. I have heard it, Amy, are you actually in Barcelona, Amy? I'm very impressed. I've heard it said that the triangle is the strongest shape for a story. Jordan, Sam, Yash, was this a conscious choice, the triangle? And she wants to know what are the advantages for the writer in writing into that shape and what makes it tricky. She's a writer with her own triangle, you might have guessed.
Mm. Um, I do love a triangle, obviously. I think this is my third, possibly even my fourth love triangle in I mean, honestly, but now that I think of every single relationship that I've written in my novels have some sort of, it's not just person meets person and falls in love. It just doesn't work like that. And I think, obviously it's more tension. It's more interesting. There are many more questions. What's going to happen? Um, it's also, I think, very natural. We don't always get what we want, everything we want from one person. And often we're presented with more than, like, I feel like my love life was like huge long dry spells, and then a number of people, and then another long dry spell, and I feel like I was often in that situation when I was younger, in various ways. I mean, I wasn't always the only woman by any means, and which is really no fun. And I think you have to navigate that. Also, there's with the triangle, there's just emotional unavailability, and I feel like that's a little bit my wheelhouse is a narrator who's a little emotionally unavailable and has to really um, feel her feelings and come to terms with them and move on from them or move through them. I'm really only interested in an emotional arc in my stories, and all the rest, all the plot and everything is just to to support that emotional arc that I want my character to go on. And I mean, I do think it's just an interesting shape. It really is. Uh, and it can push forward a book.
I'm starting to get quite a lot of audience questions now, so
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to start taking them. Um, I'm trying to ask Elizabeth's question without spoiling, which is, she says, did you know that the main character was going to be who she is
Mhm, mhm.
when you began writing Heart the Lover?
I did not. I did not. Thank you for asking that so delicately. I, it's first person. I didn't need a name. I didn't even think about her name. I just started in with I. And I believe that what happened was I write in a notebook, and then I took a note in the back of the book, and because I knew I was going to make that leap in time. And I, I, I knew that I knew that in the future she would have a husband, and I wrote the husband's name. And I was like, but I literally wrote the name. I didn't write her husband, and it just kind of came out of me. I didn't, I didn't know that. I don't want to make any spoilers, but that was my clue. And then I thought, wow, is that what's going to happen? Is that who that is? And um, I kind of kept going with it, but the whole time I was thinking, well, I can change this. I can change this. And I was thinking my editor might not like this. And yeah, I don't return to characters, from other books. And yeah, I wasn't sure. And then when I did show it to my editor, she read the whole, she didn't know. And then she read the whole draft, and she loved the surprise of it so much that she wanted to preserve that for the reader. And so that's why we don't, kind of reveal it in the flap
So it's
copy or anything like that.
literally on the last page, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there are clues. There are clues. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's on the last page.
Yeah, little Easter eggs for the people who have read Writers and Lovers. I mean, we had a bit of a discussion on the chat about, oh, should I, does it matter that I haven't read Writers and Lovers? And I almost wonder whether it was an advantage not to have read Writers
Mm,
and Lovers in a way, and then to go back
yeah.
kind of fill in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really think you can go either way. I was on one podcast and the guy who interviewed me had read them in reverse, publishing order. So Heart the Lover, then Writers and Lovers. And his intro was, you have to read Heart the Lover first. And I thought that was so funny. Like he was so insistent on it. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I can't read either of them. So like, I have no idea. Um, I have no idea.
I'm aware that I missed a question. Oh, a question about the husband. He is very chill about her past.
Mm.
Did you play around? This is from Kristen. Did you play around with him being jealous, or did you deliberately want him to be evolved?
I knew he was evolved. I knew who he was. And, I think there is a moment, of course, when in the third part where he is, he's wondering if he should have been so chill, like I think he's starting to really wonder what's really going on and have a little moment of doubt, which I think is important. But I wanted that marriage to be rock solid, you know, uh, and and they clearly have been through things that are alluded to, and they're going through a hard time as a family. But I was so interested in showing the ways, especially for those who have read it, the escalator scene. That was probably the most important scene to me in the whole book. Um, just because I, I I was so cynical about marriage for my entire life until I got married. And I feel like I am cynical no more. And I really believe that actually marriage can work. And um and I really wanted to have a moment where where readers see what what that looks like, what it looks like for someone to really show up for someone else, even in in circumstances where he would have been forgiven not to.
Mm. And I think as well, it's the contrast, isn't it, between that, the 20 something, the college relationship, the kind of, all the intellectual flirting and all of that heightened stuff that can happen at that age. And then how relationships, either long relationships or later relationships, the kind of contrast. It's not to say that one is better or worse, but just the difference
Yeah, yeah,
dynamic of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I had very little space and time to do that in. Um, but yes, that was very, very, very much my hope that people would see that contrast.
So you said that the structure was quite a long time coming. Was that because you got so into the college relationship you didn't really want to leave it, or
Mhm.
because
No,
you
I was,
first person to, well, it's all first person, but the point of view is, for, it's first and it's second and it's present and it's, there's
yeah,
a lot going on. What was the process of making
I
it?
the initially I wrote the college scenes. Um, and I didn't want to linger. I kept on trying to move it along. And I especially the Europe stuff, I really didn't want to do. And in fact, my first version of that was very short and unsatisfying, I was told by my writers group. And so I
Okay.
really kind of expanded that quite a bit. I mean, not quite a bit, but a few pages. And I added more of her emotional state. And then, of course, when I got the idea for The Secret, I had to expand it much more and change it. Um, I had to kind of go back and rework it. Um, and then, hmm, and then somewhere along the line, I came up with that, you always knew I'd write a book about you someday.
Yes.
And I had that little paragraph. I had no idea where to put it. And so then when I handed it in to my editor for the first time, it wasn't there. And then when I handed it in, sometime later, it maybe even the last, maybe I brought it in at the very end because when I took away, yeah, that's what happened. I took away that little tree climbing scene that was at the very beginning, sort of as a prologue, and I made it the beginning of part two. Then that made space for there to be something at the beginning. And so I put that in, and my editor was just crazy for it, which was great. And that first tree climbing scene had been in it's first person, but it's addressing a you. And so the direct object is a you, and so I expanded that and I kept that because that felt right for that scene for some reason. And then I went back to that you for a little tiny bit in the third part as well. And I do think of the book as being an address to him. Um, the whole thing is, listen, this is my side of the story, that I never got to tell you. That this is all my feelings that I had for you. And I don't know. There's so many situations in life, aren't there, where you just wish you could say your piece, You wish
Mm.
that you could just have somebody know exactly how it was. And so this is her trying to do that.
Yeah, that little introductory paragraph, it's just perfect.
Mm.
It's so funny, isn't it? How those things that just feel like they were always meant to be there, sometimes just
I know, and it wasn't there. And
happen.
I actually had expanded it. At one point, I had that, and it led into the theory of time, the presentism and eternalism. Um, I don't know. At one time, the title was going to be something to do with eternalism. I can't even remember what the title was, but it was. I was all over the place, and then finally, everything slotted into place once I got that secret.
Damn him.
I know, I know. And the
So
whole book,
annoying.
the whole book is about, like male privilege. And I mean, that house like represents what male students can get versus what female students can get. And, the whole book is her watching all their sort of academic privilege that they get by being male and how she is on a different path that's kind of guided by a lot of women. And so it is a little ironic that my husband did have that idea.
Well, it's very kind of you to give him the credit for it,
I,
frankly.
I know it really is. It really is.
A question from Amy Beeson, which is, she said, the book has such emotional truth, but without ever feeling heavy-handed. How do you
Thank
balance
you.
intense or intimate emotions, but keep the narrative compelling and subtle?
Thank you very, 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 very much. I feel like it's very instinctive. And I don't know. I'm just kind of feeling my way through. Um, I love dialogue. And so dialogue really has to feel true to me. It has to feel like life. I mean, I'm just really always trying to get it to feel like life. I'm not really interested in creating a fantasy situation. I mean, even within realism, but making something that doesn't feel real and that people wouldn't say that. And um I don't know. For me, it just has to feel true to the situation. I think that's sort of my guiding principle.
I'm going to leap to a completely other subject now, because Ellie has mentioned the nostalgia for days before phones and computers. And
Hmm.
really, that really struck me, that kind of I guess it's late 80s, is it the college?
Yeah. Yeah, like 87 it starts.
Yeah, the impact, how different relationships were when you had to wait by the phone. or you had to think about calling after 6 because it would be cheaper, or
Yeah. Yeah. Or it would be half your salary to call from Paris, to Knoxville, Tennessee. Yeah. That was my time of being young, and that's the time that I really wanted to um, explore. It's always such a relief to me in fiction not to have texts and cell
oh
phones
God,
and,
yeah.
people getting calls in the middle of a dinner or something like that. I don't love doing that. I had to, obviously, there was some texting at the end of the book, so I did enter the 21st century, but I haven't done it a lot in my work. And in fact, my new book is like set in the 50s and 60s, so I won't do it again
Oh, see,
anytime soon.
I was going to ask you because you've written contemporary, and then obviously Euphoria was much more historical. So is the next one a little bit historical then?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's not it's completely fictional characters, except that I think there will be a vein of like a historical event that runs through it. And I'm not 100% sure yet exactly how that works. Um, but my story is really about a fictional woman, really.
And how do you, I'm not going to dwell on that because I know there's so many more questions. Honestly, I've never seen as many questions.
Oh, thank you all so much. I wish I could see all of you.
Truly. Well, I will
Yes.
send you, and I'll send the questions. I'll send you the chat afterwards so you can see what
Oh,
everybody
that's
was saying.
nice. I would love that.
Because we were talking before everybody about the reading glasses versus, so I've had to go for Lily being fuzzy so I can see my notes and your chat. And Lily, it's gone for me being clear,
Yes,
the
because
chat
normally I
being
would, yeah,
fuzzy.
I would
It's
wear,
like
but now I can't see you, so that's not good.
Like I say, yeah, so when you're slightly historical, how do you how do you navigate the research? Because so often, even with good historical novels, the research really gets in the way, doesn't it? It
It
gets
does.
heavy.
Yeah. Talk about padding. I mean, you just feel
Yeah.
like you just want to say, you, I know this was interesting to you and you got really into your research, but you have to leave it, away from the book. I feel that way a lot with historical fiction. Um, I think the only one was Euphoria, and what was really fun about that is that there wasn't all that much information. So I didn't have to deal with lots and lots and lots of books about these things, and I just when I would do my research, I wrote in a green notebook. I didn't even think I was writing a novel. I was just interested. I was just so curious about it. But what kept happening is I would read these details about, them growing their or making their sago pancakes and like or using a crocodile egg and I would write down that detail and then I would just hear them talking or I'd see the scene and so I would always write that. And so with a lot of my details, there was sort of a scene involved. And and so it was fictional really right from the start. Um, when I went to write it, I already had all of these things and like sometimes a whole page of dialogue. And I was kind of writing the book as I was doing my research. And so I'm really hoping to be able to do that again. I think I have a lot of kind of interesting characters that I can play with and some concepts. And so I'm hoping that's how it happens.
Because so often you do feel like the writer is gone. I know all this and I have done all
Yeah.
this research and I am damn well going to make sure you know that I know.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Yeah. 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 You have to be true to the novel. You have to remember that you're writing a novel.
I've got a question from someone who couldn't be here tonight, Natasha. And she said, in the first part of the book, the characters have lots of conversations about literature. Are there clues to their personalities and relationships with each other in those conversations?
Hmm. I have to say that yes, I'm sure there are, and none of them really. I don't. I can't. Nothing comes to mind right now. But I think what happens is that those in those early conversations, I'm getting to know them, and so they say things and they give me clues to who they are. So I don't feel like I'm actively, consciously, cerebrally putting a character into the dialogue. I feel like what I what I imagine them saying, and I just kind of hear it. I don't know. It comes from my imagination and not my mind. Not and so that informs me what they're like, um and how they approach the world and approach books. And I hope that they're like consistent, as we go through.
Oh, they totally are. Um, I am just gonna trying to find a quote that I wrote down, and I should know better than to do this because whenever I do this, I can never find it, and just then waste ages looking for it. Oh my God. Uh, and I am not going to be able to find it. It was connected to, I might be able to find it in a moment. But basically, I wanted to ask you how your approach to writing and creativity changed as you've, I suppose, I don't want to say got older, I guess gained experience, life
Yeah.
experience.
How my approach to creativity, my imagination. I guess I don't feel like it's changed all that much. I hate to say it. I feel like I write in exactly the same way I always have, which was um kind of in the morning with a spiral notebook and a pencil. And I have to write all my first draft with a pencil. And that is where my imagination lies. And a cup of tea. I
So
have
hang on,
tea,
you
pencil.
hand write your first draft with a pencil.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
I do. And sometimes I worry that, like, I don't know, it'll get too smudged and I won't be able to see it. Sometimes I can't really understand my very tiny pencil handwriting. I have to kind of trace over the letters to figure out what they were. Um, but that is like a cup of tea, a morning, spiral notebook. Like that is where my creativity is, and it always has been. And and so usually I write maybe a quarter of a notebook, half a notebook, and then I'll at some point I'll want to reconnect with the beginning because I don't read it over again very often. And then I'll put it into the computer and I'll sort of change it and move forward. And then I'll go back to the notebook and write more, and then I'll put it in. And um, kind of depends where I am, when I go to the computer. Sometimes I have a whole entire notebook that I have to type in, and I'm such a slow typer, and it takes months, which is very frustrating. But
Is
and
the morning thing connected to before you were so successful and when you were still waitressing in the evening? So,
yeah, I always, 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 always was a morning writer. I mean, even in high school, I took a creative writing class, and a short story was due every Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And so every Sunday morning when I woke up, I remember I'd be in my bed and I would just write the first draft. And so I was always writing in the morning. I can work in the evening, but I can't. I first draft work really has to be um, in the morning, and I write Monday through Friday, and I take the weekends off. I think that's important too. A lot of men will tell you you have to write every day, and I just don't believe that
no,
because
I think
I had
every,
kids and I was going to
yeah.
have my weekends with my kids. So
Well, yeah, the whole kid thing, that's a whole other conversation, isn't it?
yeah, it is.
I've found my quote now. And
Oh,
it's
good.
these decisions we make in youth are everything. You have no idea. And it's, an older woman
Yeah.
tells tells Jordan it takes years to realize that truth. Do you feel like this is a book that only an older woman could have written?
I do. I do. I mean, particularly parts 2 and 3 for sure. Um, but probably even part 1. Um, that woman, Leia in Paris, I think she's giving her some really bad advice.
Mm.
She's like, marry him and have your babies, and who cares what happens after that, basically, because that's what she wishes she did. And it is funny, people will often give you the advice that of something that they didn't do and wish they had done. And it doesn't, what she's saying doesn't apply to Jordan's situation. But I do think it is true for sure that these decisions you make, they do reverberate. It's not that they're irreversible. You can, some things you can change, and sometimes you can go back and that sort of thing. Um, but I mean, the beauty of youth is that you don't realize that. So in some ways, I feel bad for the young people reading this book because you just want them to have their youth without this sense of like, oh my God, like all of this is so important and will inform the rest of my life, and be paralyzed with fear about that. Um, because that is the beauty of youth, is that you don't have any idea who I don't know, the people you meet and who's going to return and who's not, and all that stuff, is such a mystery.
You've been on tour for nearly 2 months and still going. So
Yeah.
thank you for squeezing us in. But
Oh,
are you
happy to.
seeing a difference in the responses between older and younger readers?
Yeah, I guess so. I have a lot of people who come with their mothers and grandmothers to my readings. And so that's really, really interesting. And it's often the youngest woman, who has told the older generations about my work. And so right now my audience is very young. I mean, probably 30 years younger than I am. And then there are a few, like I went to Cincinnati and I was by far the very, very oldest person in the room. And that was so fascinating
Oh,
to me,
interesting. Yeah.
because when I started my career, I mean, granted, I was 36 when my first book came out. My audience was kind of between 75 and 90. Like, those were the people who were reading my books. And it's so interesting to have kind of flip-flopped. Um,
Was
and
that Writers and Lovers that did that, do you think?
yes, yeah, and I didn't expect it, and it's been so, so beautiful, because if there's anything I can do, it's to urge people to follow their passion when they're young. I mean, that is just, and I feel so glad that I've written a book that shows someone doing that and taking all the risks and suffering the consequences. And I just, I'm watching my children's generation, come into the world and come into the workforce. And I'm so often sitting their friends down, and like, well, let me tell you, just, you cannot, if you don't want a desk job, don't get a desk job. There are so many other ways to do it. There really are, and it is a different economic
Mm.
situation now. Certainly, um, housing is so much more expensive. The cost of living is so much more expensive all around the globe. Um, but at the same time, I just so urge people to not let go of these gifts and these desires and passions that they have. Um, but anyway, back to that question. I do feel like um, the probably the younger generation identifies with the younger Jordan, and the older, you know, a
Yeah.
lot of a lot of older people have told me about their big first loves. And some people have told me how they've reconnected with them. And one woman in the South told me such a beautiful story, such a poignant story. She's probably 70, 75. she was diagnosed with cancer a few months ago. And at the same time, her old boyfriend from high school wrote her on Facebook, and they have reconnected, and they had just met at a city in between them, and they had had like a fantastic weekend together. And I was crying when she was crying, I was crying. And she said that she had been kind of sending him screenshots of parts of my novel, like, as you know, because she felt like it was like speaking to her directly. And it meant so much to me. It was just amazing.
Has the crying surprised you? Because practically everybody I know who's read it, not, I mean, a bit in this group, but also everybody else I know, they're all weeping.
Yeah, it has surprised me so much. I cannot tell you. When I wrote that third part, I definitely walked around with like an ache and a heaviness in my chest, just I didn't want to be writing. I remember telling my husband, this is so hard. I don't know, I was so low. But I wasn't, it's more of a cathartic cry that people have as readers. And I think it's a cry that probably involves a lot of things. Um, and I I didn't expect it. I mean, it's a dream to think that you can write something that people, and they actually feel enough, and they feel like these characters are real enough for them to have emotions about them. And that is such a meaningful thing to me, and not something I ever take for granted. So I'm so grateful.
Everybody's saying it's a good cry. Earlier, a comment that I clocked but then missed was someone saying at the same time as we were talking about the emotions and the kind of keeping it, not overdoing it, and keeping the pace going and keeping it subtle. People were saying at that time that it was, that they were right in there with the characters. And I don't know. I can't decide whether the crying is partly because you are right in there with the characters, and the third part, which we won't talk about, it's so heart-wrenching. But whether there's also an element because if you're roughly my age, you were at college at exactly that time, whether there is a bit of an element, which ties into people reconnecting with, exes from college or high school, whether there is a little bit of an element in the crying of the road not taken.
Interesting. Interesting. I don't know. People haven't told me why they're crying. I haven't really asked that.
We have to now.
Maybe they can tell us in the chat.
Yeah, anybody, or is everybody just being cathartic? Yeah, I mean, there's some people saying crying for our own lost loves and nostalgia. We've run out of time and I don't want to let you go, and I don't think anybody wants to let you go.
Oh,
Um, can
thank you all so much. Yeah,
oh
go ahead.
can I just I'm just going to ask you a completely unrelated question, which is what are you reading right now?
I am reading, it's an arc for that my editor is publishing in April. It's called A Single Man. And I'm halfway through and I'm really, really liking it. But I'm also actually, I listen to things. And so I'm listening to The Wilderness by Angela Fournoy. I don't know if it's come out. I'm sure it has come out there. Really good, really interesting. Four women in New York in their 30s. It's really good. And then I'm also listening to Isola. Uh, I can't believe I'm blanking on her name. I'm just totally blanking on her name. I'm so sorry. I'm so tired right now. Um, um, Isola by my dear friend. Anyway, it's really, really good. Uh,
Well, don't, I mean, you've been on the road for like nearly 2 months. Where are you off to now?
yeah, I'm in Stamford, Connecticut. I'm going to another town in Connecticut tonight. I go to New York tomorrow. I come back to Connecticut on Friday. Then I go to Miami. Then I go to Key West. Then I come home for Thanksgiving. And then I go to Paris to see my daughter, and then I go to Rome and Milan for the Italian publication.
Well, good luck with everything. And thank you so much. I've absolutely loved talking to you, and I know that everybody's loved it. And I will send the chat over so you can read it at your leisure if you'd like to. And
Oh,
that Mel says safe travels. Yes, go well. And thank you so much, Lily. It's been
thank you. Thank you all
and
so much. I
thank
will be over
you.
there in at the end of May,
Thank
beginning
you.
of June.
Oh, well, do
Yeah.
well, I'll make sure that your publisher lets us know, and I'll let everybody know when you're going to be here. And thank you for writing this because we loved it.
Oh, thank you, Sam, so much. I loved being here. Take care.
Thank
Take
you.
care,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody. Good night.
Night.
Night. Oh, good afternoon to you.